talk with former NFL quarterback Mark Malone from NBC Sports Radio, the 24/7 live sports talk network. You can listen at NBCSportsRadio.com. Download the NBC Sports Radio mobile app today. Mark, welcome back as we are already in week 3, and we've got some very interesting storylines early in the season as always. How are you?
I'm terrific. Yeah, I listen. It's been an interesting, not the way I expected it to go, but it's been an interesting first couple of weeks. It seems like almost an extension of the preseason, to be honest with you. But yeah, the further we get into the season, I think we're going to have a better idea of what these teams are all about. So this is a terrific weekend to watch football. Yeah,
man. And there were some interesting results from last week that make these storylines this week. But obviously, the big news here and around the NFL is the return of Carson Wentz. He'll be back for the Eagles. Interesting matchup. Luck against Wentz in this one, and I'm kind of interested to get your take on both of these guys. Where do you think Wentz will be on Sunday, and what have you seen from Andrew Luck in his 2 games since missing the whole season?
Well, let's start with Carson Wentz. First of all, happy that he's finally back. And by the way, we say finally back, but he's on the front end of what was a 9 to 12-month recovery period, so he's worked his tail off. In terms of what I expect of Carson, my guess is he'll be a little bit rusty. I think he did a nice job in the pocket a year ago, but what separated him from most people was what he was able to do out of the pocket extending plays. And I'm really interested to see how that knee functions in a game-type situation. One of the things he's going to be looking for is somebody to ring his bell one time so he can kind of knock that off and get past that. Anybody who's gone through a major injury and reconstructive surgery like that is in the back of their mind, they're always wondering how that thing is going to respond. He's not going to have some of the weapons that he's had a lot of success with, mainly Alshon Jeffrey. Mike Wallace is now out with a broken fibula, so he's not going to have some of the weapons that I think will help him be successful. But again, I think we're all waiting with bated breath right now to find out what this guy is going to look like coming back, and he's going to have some rust. In terms of Andrew Luck, he's kind of a work in progress with a football team that is in a rebuilding state more than anything else. I thought the defense played their butt off last week, which was a bit of a shock, but that front 7, and especially the defensive line, I thought played really, really well. In terms of Luck himself, he's got to figure out a way to get rid of the football a little bit quicker for a couple of reasons. First of all, puts a lot of pressure on the offensive line, and secondly, after 18, 19 months of recovering from this shoulder issue, he plays the position a little bit like a linebacker, and it's great because he extends plays and he's able to get the football down the field. But I mean, when your franchise quarterback is, in a situation where every time he takes a hit like that, you're holding your breath, it's not good. So I'm hoping that Frank Reich can continue to drum that into his head and get him to a point where he gets the ball out on schedule. And I think if he does that, he's going to have a lot more success.
Mark, you mentioned Frank Reich, and when there's a situation when a team plays against a coach, is that a difficult week in terms of the team that's playing against? Like Reich knows this Eagles team very well. Does that make the game a little bit more difficult for Doug Pederson, knowing that they got to maybe change? So do they change things like that? How does that go?
Yeah, well, it does. And first of all, I mean, Frank is very familiar with the concepts, for instance, that Doug Pederson is going to run and out of what formations he likes to run them. And we talk all the time, Bill Belichick made the phrase situational football a very popular term. And so Frank Reich is in a position where he understands what's going on. So Doug Peterson's going to have to self-scout his football team a little bit, and he's going to have to probably try to change some calls or some audibles, words that Frank Reich, I'm sure, is familiar with and has already talked to the defense about a little bit. So, yeah, it makes it a little bit more difficult. It's almost like you're playing, a division opponent.
Right.
We always talk about, you throw the record books out when you play a division game because people are so familiar with you. Frank Reich is as familiar as anybody with that offense, and for that matter, Carson Wentz. So I'm sure they're burning the midnight oil in Philadelphia this week.
All right, Mark Malone, a couple quick hits with him in the NFC East. Giants and Houston, both 0-2. Giants have their issues on the offensive line. Can they go on the road and fix those issues, or is that going to be something that hampers them all year?
Well, it's something it's difficult to fix overnight. I mean, they've really rebuilt that offensive line. You got the rookie at left guard. They haven't had their center. You move Flowers over to the right side. They brought Solder in as a free agent from New England, and it's better than it was a year ago. They haven't physically gotten beat. If you watch that Dallas game, they were beat more with schemes, twists, and dogs by linebackers. where guys just weren't coming off blocks and picking that stuff up. And it's made it tough on Eli Manning. He's 37 years old. He's accumulated a lot of hits. You look at his eyeballs and his facial expression sometimes on some of those plays, and I said the other day on my show, he looks like an 8-year-old kid that wandered out on the freeway a little bit, like what the hell's going on? They've got to find a way to get that ball out a little bit quicker. They've got to run the football better, clearly, and I think they'll be better from playing, from in front as opposed to behind. Because once you get in a situation where you got to throw it almost every down, those guys pin their ears back and take advantage of what is a weakness of yours, which is pass protection right now.
Dallas, they got the win against the Giants last week. They got to go to Seattle. Seattle 0-2, but they get to go home. They had the quirk in the schedule where they play 2 road games. Is this a tough spot for Dallas to go on the road, but not the same Seahawk team?
Well, it's not the same Seahawk team. Talking about offensive line issues, they continue to have them. And Russell Wilson is trying to do it all, and he continues to turn the football over. The defense is in rebuilding mode. Dallas was a bit of a surprise to me against the Giants. Not necessarily what they did offensively, and they became more aggressive. Scott Linehan, the offensive coordinator, called more downfield passes out of play action. They got Dak involved a little bit more in the run game with the zone reads, and were very successful with it. But I was really surprised at how well that defense played. Putting pressure on Eli Manning, but how they played in the back half. Byron Jones has done a great job moving from safety to the corner.
Yeah.
And Awuzie, the other corner, I thought has played very well too. So I don't know if that was, just kind of a surprise and they were playing a football team like the Giants who have some deficiencies, or if they can continue to play like that on defense. But I think that'll be a pretty good football game, to be honest with you.
All right, Mark, last one here. Washington last week. They lose at home after going on the road and winning. They didn't look very good last week. They got bottled up. Pederson only had 3 carries in the first half. They're playing Green Bay with Rodgers all banged up. He's saying it's going to get worse as he keeps playing. So kind of intriguing. Can Washington rebound at home?
I find that to be unlikely. I mean, listen, we all were kind of sat there with our jaws dropped open when Adrian Peterson at 34 years old ran as well as he did in week 1.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden week 2, you got a running game. So you put a lot of pressure on Alex Smith, and that defense in Washington is still a work in progress, in my opinion. So I like Green Bay. In terms of Aaron Rodgers, I said this on my show a million times. As good as he is out of the pocket and extending plays, I think he's much more efficient in the pocket when the ball comes out on schedule and on time. That's going to be a part of what they continue to do and have to do until that knee gets better. But I would definitely like Green Bay in this football game.
All right, he's Mark Malone, former NFL quarterback, NBC Sports Radio. Of course, played a long time with the Steelers. 24/7 live sports talk network. You can listen at NBCSportsRadio.com. Enjoyed it, Mark. Thanks so much.
My pleasure, my friend. You enjoy the football this weekend.